After Nero's death in 68 AD, Rome entered one of the most unstable periods in its history. 4 emperors claimed the throne in a single year. Roman legions fought each other, the treasury was drained, and large parts of the city were still damaged from the Great Fire. When Vespasian finally secured power, he inherited a bankrupt capital, a furious population, and a city filled with the ruins of Nero's massive golden house, including an artificial lake occupying prime land in the center of Rome. Vespasian needed a public project that could restore order, erase Nero's legacy, and show Romans that stability had returned. So he decided to build a new amphitheater on that drained lake, a structure that would become the Colosseum. It's 70 AD. The air in Jerusalem is thick with smoke and the stench of death. After a horrific months-long siege, the city is burning. Roman soldiers, drunk on victory, tear through its streets and alleyways. The Great Temple, the holiest site in Judaism, is engulfed in flames, its gold-plated walls melting like wax as priests are cut down where they stand. Men, women, and children are slaughtered or rounded up for the slave markets. Amid the carnage, legionaries haul away their prize, priceless artifacts, silver trumpets, and a solid gold menorah, the sacred heart of a conquered faith. To understand why the Colosseum was even built, we have to go back to the chaos that came before it. Welcome to Rome in 68 AD. The city is a powder keg. For more than a decade, it's been under the thumb of Emperor Nero, a ruler whose very name became a shorthand for tyranny and self-indulgence. In 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome had left huge parts of the city in blackened ruins. Rumors flew that Nero himself had started it, maybe even playing his lyre as the city burned, all so he could clear land for a new, impossibly grand palace. Whether that's true or not, it's what people believed. On the ashes of their homes, Nero began building his Domus Aurea, or Golden House, sprawling over roughly 200 acres in the heart of Rome. This wasn't just a palace. It was a private city within a city, with forests, vineyards, and a massive artificial lake right where citizens' homes used to be. Its rooms were gilded and crusted with jewels. For the people of Rome, now homeless and squeezed into slums, the Golden House was the ultimate symbol of a ruler who didn't care about them, a monument to greed built on their suffering. Public fury boiled over. Finally, in 68 AD, abandoned by his own guards and declared a public enemy, Nero took his own life. But his death didn't bring peace. It created a power vacuum, and Rome plunged into one of the darkest periods in its history, the year of the 4 emperors. In a single bloody year, 4 different generals, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and finally Vespasian, claimed the throne, each backed by his own army. The empire turned on itself. Roman legions marched on Rome, fighting other Romans. The city was a war zone, the treasury was empty, and the people were terrified and cynical. The dynasty that had ruled since Augustus was gone, and the idea of a stable Roman Empire seemed to be dying with it. Out of this chaos, one man clawed his way to the top, a tough, no-nonsense general named Vespasian. Unlike the aristocrat Nero, Vespasian was from a humble background. He'd earned his power on the battlefield. When the civil war broke out, he was clear across the empire in Judea, putting down a massive rebellion. Seeing the chaos back home, his legions declared him emperor. By the end of 69 AD, his last rival was dead, and the Senate made it official. But Vespasian inherited a mess. Rome was bankrupt, its infrastructure was crumbling, and its people were demoralized and deeply distrustful of their leaders. Vespasian knew he didn't just need to rule, he needed to heal the city. He had to restore faith in the government, refill the treasury, and, most importantly, win over the Roman people. To do all that, he needed two things: a spectacular military victory and an obscene amount of money. The solution to both problems was waiting for him back in the east, in that besieged city called Jerusalem. While Vespasian was securing his power in Rome, he left his eldest son, Titus, to finish the job in Judea. The First Jewish-Roman War had been a furious uprising against Roman corruption and rule. By 70 AD, the rebellion had been backed into its last stronghold, the holy city of Jerusalem. What followed was one of the most horrific sieges in ancient history. Titus and his massive army surrounded the city just before Passover, intentionally trapping the thousands of pilgrims who had flooded in. More mouths to feed, with no food allowed past the Roman lines. Inside the walls, the situation became a living hell. Jewish defenders fought each other as fiercely as they fought the Romans. The historian Flavius Josephus, a former Jewish commander who defected to the Romans, chronicled the nightmare. He wrote of starvation so bad that people gnawed the leather from their belts. Gangs roamed the streets, breaking into homes for a single crumb of food. In one chilling account, he describes a woman, driven mad by hunger, who killed and cooked her own infant son. Outside, the Romans were just as merciless. Josephus reported that hundreds of refugees were captured daily, then scourged, tortured, and crucified in full view of the city walls, a grim message to those still inside. After months, the Roman war machine finally broke through. The final stand was at the Temple Mount. Titus may have wanted to spare the temple, but in the chaos, a soldier tossed a torch inside. What followed was a massacre. Josephus wrote that the ground was buried under so many bodies that soldiers had to climb over piles of the dead to chase the survivors. The real prize, though, was the temple treasury. For centuries, Jews across the known world had sent donations to the temple. It was their national bank. Roman soldiers plundered everything. They stripped the gold from the gates and walls and seized the sacred vessels, the table of showbread, the silver trumpets, and the famous seven-branched golden menorah. The spoils were so immense that when the plundered gold flooded the market, its price in the East reportedly dropped by half, according to Josephus. Tens of thousands of survivors were rounded up. Josephus claims 97,000 were enslaved, a number modern historians find high, but the true figure was certainly in the tens of thousands. They were shipped across the empire, with a huge number destined for Rome. For Vespasian, it was all over. His son Titus was a hero. He had his great victory, and he held a massive triumphal parade in Rome, parading the temple's sacred treasures through the streets. And now, he had the money. The wealth of a conquered nation was his, and he had the perfect project in mind, one that would erase the memory of a hated tyrant and cement his new dynasty. Vespasian's plan was a stroke of political genius. He would demolish Nero's reviled golden house, that symbol of private greed, and build something for the people in its place. He specifically targeted the centerpiece of Nero's palace, the enormous artificial lake. He ordered it to be drained. On the very spot where a tyrant built a private pond, Vespasian would erect the largest ancient amphitheater the world had ever seen, a gift to the Roman people. It was to be called the Flavian Amphitheater, a monument to his new family dynasty. We know it by its later nickname, the Colosseum, likely named for a colossal statue of Nero that once stood nearby. Construction began around 72 AD. A reconstructed inscription tells us exactly how he paid for it. The Emperor Vespasian ordered this new amphitheater to be erected from his general's share of the booty. The project was directly funded by the spoils of the Jewish war. But the war provided more than just money. It provided a massive workforce, while skilled Roman engineers, architects, and artists designed and oversaw the work. Much of the grueling manual labor fell to captives. Many historians believe tens of thousands of Jewish prisoners were put to work on Vespasian's building projects across Rome, likely including the Colosseum. Imagine the scene: thousands of slaves quarrying 4-ton blocks of travertine stone from the hills at Tibur, modern-day Tivoli, 18 miles away. They would have dragged them to a river, loaded them onto barges, floated them to Rome, and then hauled them to the construction site. It was grueling, deadly work. Day after day, they toiled to build a monument celebrating their own defeat, paid for with the treasures of their own destroyed temple. The engineering was revolutionary. Using their mastery of concrete and the arch, the Romans created a structure that was both immensely strong and visually elegant. 80 entrances on the ground level, known as vomitoria, allowed 50,000 spectators to fill and empty the building in minutes. They were seated by a rigid social hierarchy, the emperor and senators in the front, the wealthy behind them, and at the very top, the poor, foreigners, and women. The Colosseum was a concrete model of Roman society. Vespasian, the old soldier, wouldn't live to see it finished. He died in 79 AD. His son Titus, the conqueror of Jerusalem, took over, determined to finish his father's work and give it a spectacular debut. In 80 AD, the Flavian amphitheater was ready, and Titus inaugurated it with 100 straight days of games, an event unlike anything Rome had ever seen. It was a festival of state-sponsored violence, and it was all free for the people. So what was a day at the games actually like? The morning was for the venations, or wild animal hunts. Exotic beasts from every corner of the empire. Lions, tigers, bears, elephants, rhinos were pitted against each other or hunted by armed men. The historian Cassius Dio tells us that on the inaugural days alone, over 9,000 animals were slaughtered. The midday slot was reserved for public executions. Criminals and prisoners of war were thrown to the beasts, crucified, or forced into elaborate reenactments of myths where they would die gruesomely for the crowd's amusement. But the main event, what everyone was waiting for, was the afternoon show, the gladiators. Gladiators were usually slaves or prisoners, but the best of them could achieve rock star status. They were a huge investment for their trainers, so contrary to popular belief, not every fight ended in death. But death was always on the table, the ultimate thrill for the audience. Ancient sources claim that for the grand opening, Titus even staged a mock naval battle. He had the arena floor waterproofed and flooded, bringing in specially trained animals to perform in the water before ships, crewed by prisoners, fought to the death. It was the ultimate display of imperial power, the ability to turn an arena into an ocean. This was more than just entertainment. It was policy. The poet Juvenal later called this strategy panem et circenses, bread and circuses. By providing free food and distracting spectacles, the emperors could keep the restless population of Rome placated. It was a powerful tool of social control. The games reminded everyone of the emperor's generosity, gave them a controlled outlet for their violent impulses, and offered a visceral lesson on what happened to those who defied Rome. The Colosseum wasn't just a building. It was perhaps the most effective piece of political propaganda ever built. For almost 400 years, the Colosseum was the epicenter of Roman entertainment, a stage for both breathtaking spectacle and unspeakable cruelty. Modern estimates often suggest that hundreds of thousands of people, and perhaps over 1 million animals, died within its walls. The end of the games was a slow process, tied to the transformation of the empire itself. As Christianity grew from a persecuted sect to the state religion, its leaders increasingly spoke out against the bloodshed. In 325 AD, Constantine, the first Christian emperor, tried to discourage the fights, but the tradition was too popular to stop. The final end to gladiatorial combat is often credited to an event in 404 AD. According to the story, a monk named Telemachus traveled to Rome, entered the Colosseum, and rushed into the arena to stop a fight. The crowd, furious at the interruption, supposedly stoned him to death. The emperor, in response, issued a definitive ban. The story of Telemachus may be more legend than fact, but it captures a real shift in the empire's morals. The era of men fighting to the death for sport was over. Animal hunts, however, continued for another century. With the games gone, the Colosseum's purpose vanished. The fall of the Western Roman Empire sealed its fate. It was damaged by earthquakes, especially a massive one in 1349 that collapsed the entire outer southern wall, creating the ruin we see today. For centuries, it was neglected and plundered, its stone reused to build palaces and churches across Rome. It was repurposed as housing, workshops, and even a fortress. Slowly, its status shifted again. The haunting ruin became a symbol of Rome's lost glory. The Catholic Church, which once condemned its pagan rituals, eventually consecrated it as a sacred site, a memorial to the Christian martyrs traditionally believed to have died there. Today, the Colosseum stands as the enduring symbol of Rome, a breathtaking ruin that testifies to the genius of Roman engineering. But it's a monument with a dual legacy we should never forget. When we look at its magnificent arches, we should remember the fire and slaughter in Jerusalem that paid for it. When we gaze at its tiered seats, we should remember the sacred treasures looted to fund its construction. And when we stand before the arena floor, we must remember the army of captives who labored and died building it, and the hundreds of thousands of lives sacrificed on its sands for entertainment. The Colosseum is more than just an ancient stadium. It is a monument born from the ashes of war, funded by plunder, and built with the blood and sweat of the vanquished. It is a chilling testament to how power can be won, how a population can be controlled, and how a civilization's grandest achievements can be forever linked to its greatest cruelties. It reminds us that to truly understand the past, we have to look not just at the magnificent structures that remain, but at the dark and bloody foundations they were built on.